The state of Maine became the latest battleground in the nationwide debate on transgender rights. At the center of the storm, Governor Janet Mills and her veto of a bill that would have barred transgender girls and women from competing in school sports aligned with their gender identity. This bill, LD 926, ignited a firestorm of controversy, pitting those who believe in protecting fairness in women's sports against those who see it as discriminatory towards transgender youth. The veto pen may have been wielded in the governor's office, but the reverberations are being felt in homes, schools, and on playing fields across the state. Mills, a Democrat, stood firm in her conviction that the bill was discriminatory. She argued that it sent a harmful message to transgender youth, already one of the most vulnerable groups in society. Her veto was praised by LGBTQ+ advocates and allies who saw it as a victory for inclusivity and equality. However, the fight was far from over. The bill's supporters, largely Republicans, argued that it was necessary to ensure fairness in women's sports. They claimed that transgender girls and women have an unfair advantage due to biological differences, potentially displacing cisgender female athletes and jeopardizing their opportunities. For them, the veto was a setback in their mission to protect what they see as the integrity of women's sports. The battle lines were drawn, setting the stage for a heated debate that would extend far beyond the borders of Maine, echoing in the halls of Congress and capturing the attention of a nation grappling with complex questions of gender identity and social justice. The debate over transgender athletes in Maine was thrust onto the national stage when former President Donald Trump waded into the fray. At a rally in support of Paul LePage, the Republican challenging Mills in the upcoming gubernatorial election, Trump seized upon the issue, framing it as a stark example of the radical left's agenda. His message was clear: a vote for LePage was a vote to protect women's sports. Trump, never one to shy away from divisive issues, painted a picture of a society where fairness and common sense were under attack. He praised LePage's stance against transgender athletes, positioning him as a defender of traditional values and a bulwark against the perceived excesses of the left. The crowd roared their approval, their cheers a testament to the potency of the issue and Trump's enduring influence. LePage, eager to capitalize on Trump's endorsement and energized by the enthusiastic response from the crowd, doubled down on his opposition to transgender athletes competing according to their gender identity. He echoed Trump's rhetoric, framing the issue as a matter of fairness for female athletes and accusing Mills of siding with woke ideology over common sense. This calculated move by Trump and LePage to inject the transgender athlete debate into the heart of the Maine gubernatorial race had immediate and far-reaching consequences. It galvanized their base, energizing conservative voters who viewed the issue as a litmus test for their values. It also forced the issue into the spotlight, making it a key point of contention in the election and beyond. The controversy surrounding transgender athletes is not unique to Maine. It has become a flashpoint in the broader culture wars raging across the United States. From state legislatures to school board meetings, the debate over whether transgender athletes should be allowed to compete according to their gender identity has ignited passions and exposed deep divisions within American society. Conservative lawmakers in numerous states, emboldened by a perceived shift in public opinion and fueled by the rhetoric of national figures like Trump, have introduced a wave of legislation aimed at restricting the participation of transgender athletes in school sports. These bills, often framed as measures to protect girls' sports, have been met with fierce opposition from LGBTQ+ advocacy groups and their allies, who argue that they are discriminatory and harmful to transgender youth. The debate has played out in courtrooms as well as legislatures, with legal challenges being mounted against these restrictive laws. Opponents argue that they violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination in education programs. The legal battles are likely to be lengthy and contentious, with the potential to reach the Supreme Court and set a national precedent. As the debate rages on, it has become increasingly polarized, with both sides digging in their heels and accusing the other of bad faith. This polarization has made it difficult to have a nuanced and productive conversation about the complex issues at stake. Section 4. Leveling the playing field or erasing identities. At the heart of the debate over transgender athletes in sports lies a complex and emotionally charged question. How do we balance the rights of transgender individuals with the goal of ensuring fairness in competition? For proponents of restricting transgender athletes' participation, the answer is clear. Biological differences between men and women create an uneven playing field that cannot be ignored. They argue that allowing transgender girls and women to compete against cisgender girls and women undermines the fundamental principles of fair play. They point to the physiological advantages that males generally possess, such as greater muscle mass and bone density, as evidence that transgender girls and women have an inherent advantage over their cisgender counterparts. Proponents of this view often cite anecdotal evidence of transgender athletes dominating their sport or specific competitions as proof that these advantages are real and pose a threat to the integrity of women's athletics. They argue that these instances, while perhaps not representative of all transgender athletes, demonstrate the potential for unfair competition and the need for regulations to protect the hard-won gains of women's sports. For these advocates, the issue is not about transphobia, but about protecting the rights of cisgender girls and women to compete on a level playing field. They believe that allowing transgender athletes to compete according to their gender identity, while well-intentioned, ultimately undermines the progress that has been made in women's sports and risks erasing the hard-fought battles for equality. Section 5. Inclusion, not exclusion. The voices fighting for trans athletes' rights. On the other side of the debate are those who believe that transgender athletes should have the right to compete in accordance with their gender identity, arguing that inclusion, not exclusion, is the path to true equality. For them, the issue is not about athletic advantage but about human rights, and ensuring that transgender youth have the same opportunities as their cisgender peers. They contend that the arguments about fairness based on biological differences are often overblown and rooted in outdated understandings of gender. They point out that there is a wide range of athletic ability within both male and female populations, and that reducing someone's identity to their biology ignores the complex interplay of factors that contribute to athletic success. Advocates for transgender athletes' rights also emphasize the profound psychological and emotional benefits that come from participating in sports. They argue that denying transgender youth the opportunity to compete alongside their peers sends a harmful message that they are not fully accepted or valued, further marginalizing an already vulnerable population. For these advocates, the fight for transgender athletes' rights is part of a larger struggle for LGBTQ+ equality and social justice. They believe that transphobia, not fairness, is the driving force behind these exclusionary policies, and that creating a truly inclusive society requires dismantling all forms of discrimination, including in the realm of sports.